Welcome to the latest installment of our Abandoned and Out of Service series. This episode is specific to the Miramar Secondary, also known as the Miramar Spur. Please carefully read these disclaimers. We would like to provide a heartfelt thank you to Mr. Rick Wright and Mr. Kenneth G. Williamson for graciously allowing their photos to be featured. We would also like to recognize Jabako for his or her photos. Despite our best efforts, we are unable to contact you. We hope you are in good health and doing well. We would like to credit Public Images courtesy of Keller C. Foster, the San Diego Historical Society, and the Pacific Southwest Railway Museum. Special thank you to our railroad historian Mitchell Myers. A good starting point is that there were a civilian industry side of the Miramar Secondary and also a military side. The military trackage served a variety of different bases in this area. The base names listed here were part of our research as each offered unique information. This list includes Naval Air Station Miramar, which remains famous for the 1986 theatrical blockbuster Top Gun. The movie has some cheesy music, but here are some memes about it anyway. What is now known as Marine Corps Air Station Miramar has evolved significantly over time and predates the country's national highway network, making rail service critical for both passenger and freight when the U.S. Army opened Camp Kearny in 1917. The rail network on base featured two distinct branches, at least 3 depots, a rail yard at the Y, and a rail yard at the eastern end. The Atchison, Topeka, and the Santa Fe provided both freight and passenger service, and the depots were often rendezvous locations for high-ranking officers and senior enlisted leaders, in addition to other VIPs. The strategic importance of Miramar and its rail network increased with World War I and World War II. The Navy and Marine Corps assumed command of various installations during this time. The railroad once extended over the highway to Camp Elliott. The northern train yard doubled in size. This was the military part of the Miramar Secondary at its height circa 1943. The various Miramar military bases and Santa Fe Railroad were critical to victory for the Allied forces. The Allied victory thankfully ended this worldwide conflict. As the military mobilization winded down, tank units from East Miramar's Camp Elliott were loaded up and sent by rail north to their new home at Camp Pendleton. Secondary to Marine Corps tanks vacating Camp Elliott, that expansive section of the rail network became redundant. After World War II, approximately 50% of the rail yard was ripped out. Camp Elliott went from the Marines to the Air Force, NASA, EOD, and then absorbed by the Navy as part of a singular Miramar base. The post-war effort included the development of a national interstate highway network. The diminutive 2-lane Highway 395 became the mammoth 19-lane Interstate 15, State Route 163 connector. Some of the ruins of Camp Elliott and the former right-of-way remain visible, but these sections are restricted. By 1977, the military network on the base was no longer utilized by DoD. The center cab switches were sent out to other bases, donated, or simply parked. Special thank you to Mr. Rick Wright for sharing these incredible photos. Southern Pacific 4449, also known as the Daylight, pulled the American Freedom Train into Naval Air Station Miramar to celebrate the country's bicentennial. Special thank you to Mr. Kenneth Williamson for the photos of the museum trains on base. What is known today as the Pacific Southwest Railway Museum was previously located on the base's remaining track network. Both diesel and steam locomotives were operated. The museum's rolling stock and locomotives were later transferred to Campo. Out-of-service railroad track for Marine Corps Air Station Miramar circa 2001. The remaining military track was completely removed circa 2012. A vintage Buddha bumping post remains where the old train yard was once located. The silhouette of buried track can be seen in certain areas. Track components can still be found along the old right-of-way. We are not sure how old this track spike is. The former right-of-way continues west toward the gate. The remaining track was removed by 2012, and a paved jogging trail assumed most of the former right-of-way. The last segment of military right-of-way remains untouched after track removal. This is the military track in 1917, at its height in 1943, circa 1977, 2001, and today. This is a civilian industry track at its height. An ideal starting point is the most eastern sidings near Cabot Drive. This rail dates back to 1915. The siding on the left served Von Tire. This is the former right-of-way for the Cal Silo Sharp Diet sidings. This is the Kaisera JS delivery siding. The right-of-way approaching Daly Drive has only some ballast remaining. Some of the track remains visible near the former Al Smith Court grade crossings. This vintage grade crossing remains connected to the National Rail Network, but is in extremely poor repair. This is where several former San Diego Charlie U-2s have been stored until recently. There is word BNSF may abandon this specific section of track after the long-term rolling stock storage is moved. This former siding crossed Carroll Way to what is now Restaurant Depot. Special thank you to Jabako for his photos. This is 30 years ago and today. This grade crossing component remains energized despite there no longer being any track. This is looking across Trade Street 30 years ago and today. Dock siding 5046 is partially disassembled. The old Nestlin distributor's siding along the right is abandoned with its switch removed. The Bond Stow track was the site of a low-speed derailment and was removed from service. The Bond siding right-of-way has since been buried. The track that previously connected to the military base is now a busy bulk terminal for Plastic Express. The KD product siding along Consolidated Way is partially disassembled. All the other sidings that previously crossed Consolidated Way have been removed. The grade crossing at Frostmar Place was recently rebuilt. This is the entire military and civilian industry track map for context. This concludes our virtual tour regarding the history of Miramar Secondary, aka Miramar Spur.